to talk about the types of system integrations that folks are dealing with or looking into for PSA, and what's really the right one for you. System integration means connecting systems together. At a very basic level, there's the human interaction, it's a HMI, human-machine interface, which is you type something into one system and then you type it in again in a different system. But that's not the kind of integration I'm talking about. I'm talking about connecting it with programs and having one system feed another and vice versa. So we'll go through the different types of integrations and talk about what are the considerations between some, two basic ones, which are batch and real time. And then I'll relay some of the things we know about the technologies that we use and we're related to. And then just covering things like pitfalls and best practices, things that just because you connect systems together doesn't mean it automatically will start working right off the bat. So we definitely have some lessons learned and some experience that we want to share with everyone on that area. So let's talk about the different kind of integrations that happen. And from our point of view, they all happen with PSA because we deal with professional services automation technologies. And because that's our focus, we tend to think they become the center of the world, where they're connecting quite often with a sales system. And that may be bidirectional, actually, where in your sales system you're tracking what is coming, potential customers, potential projects, and then passing those over to the PSA tool so that you can do early planning, maybe some predictive forecasting, understanding if you need to hire people based on what's going on with the sales system, right? So, and then the sales team wants to know how well the project may be delivered, so you pass information back from the PSA, maybe the types of resources you have available or their next availability, maybe things like how much has been invoiced for a customer. So definitely each team, professional services and sales, gets to have their own best-of-breed system, and then you connect the two together to automate the data and provide information, ideally seamlessly between the two systems. Now, on the back end, when you're dealing with PSAs, you're often doing project management, and you're doing, project management is more than just a bunch of hours. It's how much you're spending in costs for expenses and labor, how much is the project itself making, especially if it's fixed fee, what's the budget amount. So you're dealing with a lot of financials with a PSA. So that tends to integrate with an ERP. And again, that can also be bidirectional with your accounting package, because you're sending over things like vendor bills and invoices and revenue, and then your accounting system is sending information back like, hey, your expense report was reimbursed, or your invoice was paid, or we just got this, PO from a customer. So those are kind of things that you would integrate the PSA for. And the CRM PSA ERP combination is actually pretty common in the environment, in many environments. And then you think about, well, who logs into all of these things? People, employees. So wouldn't it be nice, instead of having to submit a ticket to a service desk and have different people set up different users and different accounts, couldn't we integrate it with an HCM or an HR system to be able to more automatically set up, you hire somebody, you onboard them, you set them up in one system, and it ripples through and sets up the users in other systems that they need to access more readily. And this also starts coming into things like maybe some vendor management activities and the like. Now, there's also corporate cards, so that, looking for ways to make it easier for employees to put data into tools for processing, especially expense reports. If you have a corporate card, you may have a need to have some kind of import or integration to put those corporate card expenses into your PSA, and that would be more of a one-way integration or an upload type activity, unless you were using a system like Concur that connects with the card, the vendors and the cards directly. So that also is a way to think in terms of, it's not necessarily information sharing, it's ease of use and thinking about your end users, and likewise automating things or making it easier to deal with payroll, passing information from the PSA about time taken, jury duty time, benefits, things like that the payroll department needs to make. And on top of all of this, all of these different types of integrations, there's your data warehouse option, which is you put data in it from your PSA, which is also married up with stuff from your ERP CRM. So it's not even a point-to-point. It's more of a information warehousing that you can do all kinds of business intelligence and analytics to it. So lots of different things drive the need for integration, lots of different ways to do integration, and there's no, in my view, there's no single answer. Like you can't just say, okay, we're going to integrate, we're going to use just this technology, and that's the only thing you can do. There are different approaches and benefits, which leads me to my next discussion about the types of integrations, which is batch and real time. Of all those integrations that we just talked about, do they all have to be real time? Should some of them be batch? Can they all be batch? What are the pros and cons of using a batch versus a real time? So if you're not familiar with these terms, really what batch means is that you're getting pieces of data and you're loading them up into like a big block of file, like a file, for example. And you're taking that file and you're transferring it over from one system to another, and then that system is basically reading that data and processing that data. So you do it more in sort of point in time type things, maybe daily, maybe monthly, maybe weekly. So batch is more of a group it together and then pass it over in a packet. Versus real time. Real time is more, hey, a piece of data was just created, let it flow through the pipe and talk to the other system as soon as it's been done. So creating a user, let's say, for example, in your HR system, and the minute that you save that user record, that is triggering that piece of information to go over to your PSA to say, hey, we have a new employee, we need to set up a user account, and that integration does it real time. So really the difference between batch and real time are things like how quickly do you need the data from point A to point B? Do you need it sort of grouped together and passed over in blocks, or does it have to happen real time where you have more of a triggering event? So something happens and that data is automatically passed over to the other system. Okay. So really there becomes a discussion about the very first thing. Yeah, we're going to connect A and B together. We're going to connect our CRM to your PSA. So first off, what problem is that going to solve? And many times it starts off simply as we just want the data to be consistent. But really it's solving a bigger question about how soon does it need to be visible, who does it need to be visible to, and what sort of business process or is it supporting, like the handoff process between sales and services, for example, or services and accounting. You know, hey, this project is done, the milestone's closed, I want to be able to trigger the invoice. Is that something that is real time, that you want to send it the minute that the deliverable is closed? Or is it more of a, every month we do invoicing, so we do invoicing once a month, we'll pick it up when we do our monthly invoicing. So as you decide which way to go, there's also a monetary definition behind which one is the right way to go, as well. Many times I'll work with customers and the concept of real time just is very appealing. I just want to know the minute I do something, it's in the other system. But real time sometimes requires a lot of development and a lot of testing, a lot of time, and real time also means that if the mistake is made, it's also replicated in real time. So now you have more cleanup to do versus having something that gives you a check and balance, like a batch system does. So those are all things that, real time sounds good because it's nice to have things in all the systems as soon as you possibly can. But there are some benefits to thinking in terms of batch processing because A, it may be cheaper to implement and still satisfy the need. B, it would give you the potential to catch a mistake if you had a check and balance or a review process before the data transfer occurred. So there's a lot of different factors that go into deciding whether it's batch or real time, and it's not necessarily all technology based. There might be a lot of sort of making sure that you're doing things as efficiently as possible from a business process perspective. Okay. Once you kind of go through, part of the thing, like I said, with the batch versus real time, you do have to think in terms of technology. What technology am I going to use? And in many cases, batch may be appealing because the systems that you're dealing with may have integration tools that are available directly from the vendor, or that they're just built in to the system in general. Systems like Kimball have a nice integration like data extract, logic layer in it that allows you to create very nice extracted files with some logic added to the data translation. Other systems like OpenAir come with something called an integration manager tool, or OpenAir Connect, which is from NetSuite, and it talks natively to the OpenAir database. In both of those examples, those are batch-based technologies, but they come from the vendor. So because they come from the vendor, there's more of a confirmation that it obviously will work with the tool because it's built by the vendor who built the tool. But third-party integration tools are a big market now, and we here at TopStep are actually talking to quite a few of them because they support both batch and real-time. So their goal is really to provide the best of everything, because that's their focus in the technology, is to build the third-party integration tool. You may have heard some of the names on the screen here, like Dell Boomi, where they have an Atom Sphere type connection. We're going to be talking more about them next week in our series. But Celigo and Gingerbread have also come up with very nice solutions which do support the real-time or batch, where you can think in terms of they actually can deal with passing information in a file format to systems that they don't necessarily natively connect to. So they sort of support best of both worlds. There's also MuleSoft and Informatica, both systems of which we're familiar with them, that support the ability to connect systems together. So looking at these tools will not only show you options with batch and real time, the tools themselves have another vendor factor where you can get the support that you need, and it will grow with you as a system. Third-party tools, as you would expect, add some costs, so there's that return on investment discussion of what's going to be the best way and the long-term strategy for us as a company when we integrate systems together. Should we make this investment now, or should we make this investment later when it looks like we are starting to build more of a connected IT footprint, and having a singular tool in place would work? But you can still mix and match along the way. So definitely discussions about the type of data that you're passing drives the decision of technology, cost, and business process that you're supporting. With any kind of integration, though, there's some pitfalls that you can run into. So these are the ones that we wanted to highlight for our attendees, for our customer base, and our friends out in the community. And one is understanding the business logic and the data integrity between systems. I have in numerous occasions run into connecting system A to system B, and something simple like, is it active or inactive? Okay, and in some systems, active or inactive is represented in a database with the letter A or the letter I, and in other systems, it's represented by a number, 1 being active and 0 being inactive. So if you connect those two systems together, you have to have some type of business logic that translates 1 to A and 0 to I, or vice versa. And without doing that, you actually could cause problems in the receiving system because the system may not be able to handle the bad data. And this is where the key fields come in, understanding how things relate to each other, what's common between the systems, what's unique between the systems. Key fields are things like unique IDs that allow the systems to be able to find information very quickly and being able to connect things together. An opportunity to a project, for example, between a CRM and a PSA, that would be a key field that we'd want to watch out for. And the completeness of information. This is where if we pass information from one system to another, everything that first system knows does not necessarily need to be replicated in the connecting system. Everything on an opportunity does not need to be reflected on a project, for example. But there are key things that are useful, like who's the sales rep, okay? Maybe what's the probability of close. But it doesn't need to know, when was the last time you talked to the contact about this lead or opportunity. So making sure that we're passing the right information over that is useful to the receiving system, and vice versa, passing information back. And when you're passing the information over, making sure that if there is a field that is necessary to have a completeness of the record, that we make that field required in the sending system. So if I need to know what the business line is on the opportunity because it's driving reporting in your PSA, I need to make sure that's a required field in the sales system because that needs to pass through and set values in your PSA. Okay. The granularity of the information. So here's where we start getting into more things like transaction-based integrations. This is really popular between PSA and accounting packages, ERPs, where we're passing expense data and invoice data, and what is the integration going to pass? Is it going to pass totals? Is it going to pass information grouped in some way? Or is it just passing raw data from point A to point B, and then everything else is being formatted in the receiving system? So that's also part of, because granular information, the more data you're passing through, especially in a real-time scenario, you may start hitting limits from technology of how many calls you can make and how much data you need to pass, and that drives a whole other design that may need to be considered when you're connecting the systems together. Okay. You also want to deal with the fact that if you're doing some kind of integration, thinking about what if you pass the data more than once. Something that I've run into myself, especially with connecting a sales system with your services tool, your PSA, is it's nice to get the opportunity over into the services world, but services wants to call the project something different than what the opportunity has. The opportunity is more sales terminology. The project is more services terminology. So a great example is the project comes over from your sales system and gets a default name according to the opportunity, but then the services team goes, nope, I'm not going to call it XYZ opportunity. I'm going to call it business efficiency assessment. And so you go and update the name. Well, what happens when you do an update in the sales tool that says, okay, so now we've changed the budget amount or we've negotiated, so I'm going to pass that data over to your services tool. You probably don't want to overwrite the project name. You just fixed it in your services tool. So you want to add some logic that says, set this field to begin with, but don't overwrite it. Right? And that's where the update sync type logic has to be considered in part of the design as well. Okay. And this next pitfall is a good one because sometimes it's very hard to define or avoid this. And this is a double system field ownership where both systems are the master. And it's really, in many cases, that's a no-win situation because both systems can't control information if you update it from one to the other or the other to the one, which one is the source of truth. So definitely try very hard to identify which system is the one that holds the accurate data and what that system should be feeding other systems to have accurate data. When you start going down the path of having double field ownership, you start running into potentially timing problems where people are overriding each other's changes, which is frustrating. Okay. And finally, currency conversion. So if you are in a multi-currency world, connecting systems together does not necessarily mean they understand if I pass something in USD and I store it as euros, I know how to do that conversion because, oh, I know that it was USD to euros. At the end of the day, a lot of times the integration itself doesn't necessarily have that smart. You have to build that into it. So you have to pay very close attention, because the number 1 in the money field and passing 1 over to the other money field, if you don't have that currency descriptor next to it, you could be passing completely wrong data, even though the numbers are the same. Because it's a database, and it's just a field in a database. So make sure you think about currency conversion if you do have the potential to mix and match things as you're connecting systems together. Okay. So just a couple of best practices for us to round this whole discussion out is definitely don't shortcut yourself on the design. Spend time going through and mapping out what are all the different ways that we capture data. It's amazing if you can get them all, because there's probably some outliers out there that you didn't expect, but think in terms of what ifs. What if I get 1,000 new projects right now? Like, what kind of problem am I going to have in the workflow to keep up with it? What if I get a value that is outside the range? I'm expecting a number from 1 to 12, and I get 13. What's going to happen if I get 13? What happens if I get 12? Do those boundary tests as well. So think about the processes that you want to work up front, the goals that you want to meet, and the test cases to make sure that you have thought about all the different scenarios and values that could be coming through that could potentially be impacting how the integration works. In many cases, you will have to do data translation. I've yet to see two systems that talk exactly the same language to each other from a field value perspective. So it could be something as silly as the name field in this system is first name, last name, and the name field in this other system is last name, first name. That's a data translation. So think in terms of how do you have to make data A map to what data B needs and build logic to be able to do that translation. I'm a fan of trying to put that in the integration itself because that makes the integration the thing that gets updated if there's a swap out of a system. If you switch your accounting package or you switch your HR system, then the focus is I switch my HR system and then I update the integration logic. I don't have to touch the originating system. I don't have to touch the PSA, for example, because the integration is doing the heavy lifting. That may not always be possible depending on the technology that you're using, but I try to push for that as far as design is going, and then work outside of that, if necessary, work outside of the integration logic and work inside the systems to complement whatever's left at the end of the day. And finally, analyze the cost versus the benefit. So if this is a long-term integration, and this long-term integration is going to be dealing with volumes of data, maybe a small volume to begin with, but growing with you as a company, then it may be worthwhile to invest in the third-party integration tool that's going to just continue to grow with you, and it will continue to be extendable to connect other systems as you may want to move forward. If the integration is sort of a stopgap, or it's something where there's small volume and it's a point-to-point, a batch process, a file transfer that's a low-cost solution may be exactly what you need because it's not a hardship to the company and it's not going to break for many, many years based on what it's actually passing. So think in terms of those technology costs and the scalability of your company. Also, what does it take to maintain it, right? So when you start dealing with technologies, you start dealing with versioning, right? And if you're not writing the code yourself and you're using some other tool, do you have to keep those versions up to date? What do you have to do your testing and regression testing when features come out? And those are all maintenance costs that have to be factored in when you're thinking about integration. So really, integrations I think are a very good thing. We do have a practice focused on integrations because we run into them quite a bit. It does make sure that there's data consistency. It helps reduce redundancy and support business process and communication and visibility, right, and to make sure that information is as accurate as possible. But really, if you saw the pitfalls, if you sort of just jump whole hog without thinking about the design, you can run into problems. And the more quickly bad data can replicate, the bigger problem it is to solve. So I'm a big fan of, let's start simply. Let's focus on what the objective is. Look at low-cost solutions first and consider, is this low-cost solution something that can be future-proof, or do we need to really start looking at something that's more robust? So it could, because we do expect more connections or larger company growth going on. So start simple and build on it is really sort of the message that we support. Recording.